Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of C-VILLE Live, and with me today we have a mix of C-VILLE Weekly staffers and some of the people that we interviewed for the article. We are all millennials from a different spectrum. We have old millennials and new millennials, maybe mid-millennials, I don't know if that's a thing. But we all represent different millennial viewpoints. So today we're talking about the article that we wrote, and there's also different topics that were raised by the article. So here is the issue that's on stands now. We have a fake text message conversation between kind of what you think of a stereotypical millennial is, and our headline is the millennial myth. So is this true? Is this what people think of when they think of millennials? So where the idea came from is when I first started working here, we kept talking about millennials in the workplace. We kind of looked around our staff and said, wow, we have a lot of people who work here are millennials, but we noticed there was kind of even a generational gap between who worked here. So we were talking about how do you, when you have a job ad, how do you entice millennials? What kind of benefits are they looking for? I've noticed some of the millennials I've worked with stay at a job for 2 years and they move on, and a lot of times they're even pursuing a new field, which I thought was interesting. So we just kept talking about who are these millennials. Then we noticed a bunch of other news outlets. I think Time Magazine had at least 2 different covers on millennials, and we just thought this was a conversation that we wanted to have locally. Talk about the millennial generation. What do they want? What do they want their future to be known for, and things like that. So we talked to Laura is our writer across from me, Laura Ingalls. I think she talked to at least, a dozen people. At least, probably more, just about millennials and what their perspectives were. So, to start off, in our opening spread, we have different words. We asked everyone we interviewed what are some words that come to mind when you think of millennials. So I wanted to read some of these and just get everyone's opinion. Are these true, are these not true? So we have short attention span, technology, flaky, Snapchat, entitled, tech savvy, self-absorbed, careerist, special, purpose-driven, digital natives, passion-driven, instant gratification. I don't know if any of these words jump out to anyone or kind of how you feel when you hear them. Are they correct?
Is a careerist someone who stays in one place for a long time?
I think they meant someone who was just very career focused.
Oh.
So I think that came from one of the college professors that I spoke with, who said that he sees students come in much more focused on getting a degree that will take them to a money-making career as opposed to coming to school to study what they're passionate about. So I think that was the context of careerist.
Yeah, I read that and I felt the complete opposite about that. At least in my experience, I kind of jumped from, I was interested in psychology, and then I jumped into anthropology, and then afterwards I went to education, and I was even just talking to some undergrads from UVA, and they kind of were very similar to me, where they had different interests and they were thinking about pursuing different things after graduation that did not match their major. So that's kind of like the trend that I've been seeing, is people like experimenting with things that they're interested in, and then just maybe doing something completely different after college.
Or even kind of cobbling together a career and doing several different things, which kind of what you're doing and what I've been doing for the last couple of years, of just kind of picking the things that you're passionate about and mushing them together and making a career out of it.
Yeah.
I feel like too, it probably comes out of a fear, because I feel like there's much less job security. Like we really don't know what jobs will be available and come out, and so our parents are like, make sure you get a degree so you can go out and get a job. And so I feel like there are a lot of students, especially my friends, who want to go to e-school or become doctors or something. Like, I want to be a lawyer. I'm just I have to do this, to follow this path, so that I'm not on the streets after.
Well, Sharina, wasn't it your mom who sent you that email?
Yeah.
Just a gentle reminder of what to look for when you're looking for a job, health insurance, benefits, etc.
And she never sends me emails. That's the first one she's ever sent.
Or the emails that are like top 10 useless degrees, and the top one is
English.
graphic design.
No way.
You're like, oh,
But you have a job.
yes,
That's
yeah.
Yeah, English is on the top of that list too.
Yep.
Now as much.
Yep. I think journalism was named as one of the worst jobs to have at this time. Great.
Great, so that's a really uplifting note there. What do you think of when you hear the word millennial? Do you cringe or do you embrace it?
I just think of someone younger than me. I mean, I'm 30, and I mean, like, this one is a millennial, but she's 6 years younger than me, and I mean, we can interact, and it's totally fine, and we're like, we're on the same level, but, you know, she knows things about being a millennial that I don't know. Snapchat, for instance. A lot of technology stuff, and also even, I guess, like, even dating-wise, or any other sort of category.
We definitely bring different point of views to the same situations, but they're obviously different than our parents or even you know, older cousins that aren't millennials and stuff like that. You know, my cousins that have babies don't know how to use Snapchat, but neither do their babies yet. But,
Well, Kate, do you consider yourself a millennial?
I mean, yeah, I guess I do.
Because
I
according
don't know
to
what
the
else I would
survey
be.
that we looked at for the story, you are one.
Yeah, I think I am, but I definitely think I feel like I'm on the upper end of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can tell a difference between me and someone who is a younger millennial.
Right. Yeah, I mentioned in my letter this week that we used to be called Generation Y. At some point, there was just a grouping of Y and then millennials. I feel like altogether, I'm not sure when that happened, but I was kind of excited to be Generation Y for a while. Just a little
Seems
bit.
cooler.
When I hear the word millennial, I think of myself, I'm 22, so I'm right in that age that's a millennial. I use slang in my text messages, maybe somewhat ironically, but I do it. But before I read this issue, I actually hadn't heard a lot of good things about millennials, and this is probably the most like unbiased thing that I've read in a while, and I didn't realize that some people, even older people, think that we're doing something okay, or that we stand for something that's right, or something that's okay. So.
Right.
Well, I think what came up a lot when I was interviewing people for this story, you know, both millennials and older generations who interact a lot with millennials, the general consensus seemed to be, yeah, everyone thinks millennials are the worst, but I don't think they're too bad. And so everyone seems to be getting that from somewhere, that the world hates millennials, but when you ask people individually, with the exception of a few, everyone seems to be like, okay, yeah, you know, maybe millennials aren't so bad. So it was interesting, but that message is clearly coming from somewhere.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just, I saw someone had a string of tweets, which is very millennial of me to look at, but it was just all of the different time covers for each past generation of like, man, millennials have it so hard, but then it's like Generation X, are they crazy or whatever? You know, there's like, each generation gets scrutinized and whatever. Who knows when a generation starts or ends, blah, blah, blah. I thought that was a really interesting point by Professor, was that it's all very fluid. I have friends that are my age that don't know how to use anything on an iPhone. They know how to like text and send pictures and stuff, but that's it.
I have a friend that still has a flip phone.
Oh yeah.
Aw.
Which I thought, it's
Yeah.
endearing.
And it makes me like, yeah, it seems like it's the like old man get off my lawn, you crazy kids thing that always is there, and like in 10 years we're gonna look back, or 20 years we're gonna look back at the younger like the next generation or whatever. and
Well,
be
back
like,
in our day.
yeah, we'll be like, oh, these kids, they're like, some of us will be like, oh, these kids, they're horrible. They only use their like tooth phones or whatever, and then some of us will be like, yeah, that's so bad. You know, I remember when I was a kid or whatever. So I think there's some amount of like, this always happens.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
and
We're not special. We're not the first generation to be.
We think we're special.
We do think we're special, apparently.
But I think every generation has thought of themselves as like, oh, we're unique
Sure.
and doing something new, and it's like, well, it's just like
That's just how the
the
world
environment,
works.
and the environment that we're in, like.
Being in when technology was,
Right.
increasing and everyone was using it. You had quoted one professor who even said in the ancient Athens days, they were talking about new media and how it was going to ruin that generation.
Yeah, she was,
so.
She's a professor at William & Mary, and she teaches a class on moral panic. And she said that this is something that has literally happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. This is not a new concept by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. How would you summarize a main takeaway from the article, or what did you learn, or?
I mean, I think kind of like I said before, that what I really took away from writing this was that everybody is getting the message that millennials are terrible, but not many people actually think that themselves. And it was interesting, as a millennial myself, writing this article, interviewing other millennials was fun and interesting, but it wasn't like, I didn't take away anything that I didn't already know or hadn't already experienced myself. What was, I think, the strangest part was interviewing the professors and the people in older generations and listening to them talk to me about me and about my peers. And so that was, I think that was the most interesting part for me. But yeah, I think general takeaway is that millennials aren't so bad, even though somebody is telling us that we are.
Another thing we did in this issue, on our back page, we asked our readers, what do you think the legacy of the millennial generation will be? So I wanted to read some of those too and see how close they got. So some of the words they said: selfies, the word meh, worldwide wine shortage, thoughtfulness, being upset at not getting a participation trophy, respecting the planet and diversity, and laziness. And then yesterday we were kind of talking about this. Some of the things we also would have said are, and there's discussion, you pronounce it GIF or GIF. That could be a whole nother roundtable. I personally say GIF. Memes, and then athleisure, I will say, was a new one.
Discussion about athleisure yesterday was a good one. I think it was an eye-opening experience.
So what else do you guys think could fall in this category, or?
We didn't really jump on the fact that as millennials we're not settling down as fast to have families. I feel like personally I'm more focused on creating a career and making a name for myself and what I want to do and who I want to be as a person, and not focusing on finding a partner and settling down and having children. Like, I'm 24 and the idea of having a kid still terrifies me, where, like, whoa, no, I'm sorry, Grandma.
Any parents around this table? Nope.
No parents.
No.
But, and compared to my parents' generation or even my grandparents, at 18 my grandmother already had 3 kids, and like...
At 18, she already had 3 kids.
Okay, that might have been an exaggeration.
Hang on.
At 19 she had 2,
Okay.
so we're getting there. But my dad's one of 6, and my parents only had 3 kids, and friends of mine that are actually settling down and having kids, they only want to have 1 or 2, but they've already made a name for themselves in their career. And I think that's a big millennial thing that we're focused on. I don't know if it's the making the money before you have the family, but
I think a lot of that comes from, so we do have one statistic in the story that says 65% of Virginia millennials say they might move in the next 5 years. And John, I know you kind of spoke to this a little bit, was just the desire to have that flexibility and to know that you can pick up and move to Seattle or San Francisco if you want to. And even though, kids and a house and a partner I think they are on a lot of our horizons, just not our immediate horizons. And even if that's something that you want, that might be something that we go for in our, mid-30s as opposed to our mid-20s the way our parents did. And so I think a lot of that is just kind of wanting that flexibility as opposed to, tying ourselves down the way other generations have.
Yeah, I wonder if it's too, it's just that we're enabled to do that because of, you can have children into your 30s and even when you're 40 and stuff, and it's not dangerous or riskier as much as it was when my mom had a kid at 23 and was done at 30 and that was it. I don't know, I've thought about that where it's people have the option to wait, and with medical science and stuff they can take a quick log.
As for at least with my family, people who are like my aunts and uncles and my parents are just like, well, we did this, don't do this. Like, make sure you go and you establish yourself in your career and you travel now because you can't later, like you really can't. And I feel like there's just a lot of regret with the older generation. And like you always want your kids to do better than you. So, I mean, my parents always pushed me to, you know, really establish myself in my career and to travel now before I can anymore. Because I have other responsibilities.
I also think it's very much an effect of technology, like telecommuting. I mostly telecommute, and I work for a startup where all of us telecommute, and our team members are in New York and LA and Toronto and London and Manila and things like that. And we are able to, if we want to go on a team retreat, like we've been able to like go to LA for a week and I'll be there, and some of my team members would like spend the first hours of their morning doing like their telecommuting other job wherever they're based, and then focus on the stuff that we were doing there.
So about career, I mean, how do you guys feel? Do you feel trepidation about not having one career? I mean, like we even talked about that, like knowing like when your paychecks are coming in, if you're freelancing or things like that. I mean, what does that feel like? Because to me, as an older millennial, I think I would panic. I don't know.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I've been at C-VILLE for 9 years almost.
Yeah.
So, and part of that is because I love being here, but also it's just because I feel really lucky to have a steady job with a steady paycheck and 40 hours a week. And I mean, I graduated right before the economy started to go south and got this job and just hung on to it for your life. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a just a individual. I mean, it feels like more of an individual thing. Like, I mean, I'm a lot more comfortable with like kind of flying by the seat of my pants than like even my girlfriend is like much more. I shouldn't mind saying this. Much more like wants a steady job and wants benefits and everything. And so I think it's more of an individual to individual basis and personality thing.
Sure.
I think there's a lot more options for people like me who don't like. It used to be that was the only jobs there were like 9 to 5 every day kind of things, and now there's a lot more options to like cobble together something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, a couple years ago when I left my full-time job at C-VILLE to start working at a nonprofit part-time, my plan was, you know, I was going to work for this nonprofit part-time and then continue freelancing for C-VILLE and a couple other publications. And I remember talking to my dad about, my dad's in his late 50s, and telling him about it, and he kind of said, well, that's something that I would absolutely never even think about doing, but, you know, I mean, you know, my dad said I am very risk averse, and I also would have never had that opportunity because when my dad graduated from college, he had a degree and he got a job in that field, and he has stayed in that field until now. And so I think part of it is personality. I think, you know, some of us are more risk averse and some of us do enjoy that flexibility more than others, but I do also think that, you know, technology and this, you know, a lot of the elements of this time and this generation do make it easier to do that because, you know, I work from home and I'm able to, you know, I mean, kind of like Sharina was saying, be able to work from anywhere. You know, as a writer and working for a nonprofit that didn't have a home base, I could literally work from anywhere, which, you know, is something that wouldn't have been possible, you know, even 10 years ago.
Right. So what do you think this generation will be known for, and then what do you want it to be known for? Is that the same? Is it different?
I feel like just looking at the legacy thing, looking at like selfies, like laziness, and like, you know, you see like handouts or like trophies, like that just makes me kind of mad. The fact that those are just such negative things.
It's not very flattering.
It's not flattering, and I don't think it's true. Like, it annoys me. I don't think we're lazy at all. I think we're just doing things differently. And people can't see that, especially since it also annoys me, like, come on, like, your generation raised us, okay?
Right. Like, that generation is the one
that trophies.
Exactly. That generation is the one that told us that we are special snowflakes and gave us trophies even if we were terrible at soccer. Not our fault.
No, I agree with that. A bunch of even these words on this kind of make me mad. I feel like we're a generation that's fighting for the recognition that climate change is real, and our parents' generation is not necessarily stepping up to that plate, or even, to dive into sexuality and, the spectrum of gender. Like, I know talking to my parents, my dad's mind was blown when I told him there was, the possibility of having more than 2 genders in the world. Like, okay, well, I'm not gonna dive into this right now over dinner, but, I don't know, I'd like to think that we're the generation that's really opening up more and realizing what's really going on. And I guess I have a special kind of connection to the climate change issue, and in college I did a lot of protest and fundraising and just bringing awareness to what's going on, not just in the country but in our state specifically. And we have some older generations helping us, but it's just a whole lot of college students, high school and out of college, like driving to try to fix and bring awareness to this issue. So I hope we're a generation that starts to fix these problems that other generations weren't aware of. Not that they necessarily were trying to screw us over, but it just recognizing there are problems and we want to fix them.
Right.
We're conversation starters.
Yeah.
And passion driven was I think a big theme we were talking about that came up, whether that's causes you care about or your career, things like that. That's kind of what drives a lot of people.
I think millennials know that you can't be too young to change something that means a lot to you. I'm thinking of the Charlottesville High School 9th grader who said, I want this Robert E. Lee statue removed. It makes people uncomfortable. And probably 20, 30 years ago, someone who's 15 years old, Wes Bellamy called her a 15-year-old warrior. I'm not sure that that really existed. So it's kind of concerning that we're fighting to end racism, to preach love and acceptance to everyone, and some older people think that our life is about selfies and Instagram.
Yeah, there's so much
that
more
kind of hurts.
than just a selfie.
Would you take a selfie of yourself at a protest?
Sure.
And I don't
Probably.
know, you can also promote your causes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Through these mediums. So, so social media wise, what are you guys using? Does everyone have a Facebook account?
I would say Facebook is the one I use the least.
Okay.
Hands down, I'll check Facebook maybe a couple times in the day, but I use Snapchat and Instagram way more. I check Twitter constantly.
What's constantly? You just have it up all the time?
It's on my computer at work right now.
Because you want to know what's going on in the world and locally.
Yes. No, really, it's for
Sorry.
news. It's not because Kate's tweeting fun cat gifs and stuff, but maybe she is.
I don't Twitter.
I don't know. I use social media every day without a doubt, but it's also, I can take my phone and turn it off. I'm not gonna have anxiety over the fact that I haven't texted my friends in 3 hours.
So how often are you snapping a day?
Just that look like? Since I've been sitting here, I've already received a Snapchat.
Okay.
But that's not a lot, because people younger than us are crazy on Snapchat.
That's the only way they communicate.
Yeah, that's a whole nother, Snapchat for us is I'm just using it hey, this is funny, check this out, but I don't actually want to take the time to save it to my phone and use that space. So I just send it to you really quick. But then there's the younger kids, 12-year-olds, and what they're doing on Snapchat blows my mind.
Yeah, I'm not 12, but if I use Snapchat a lot, and if I don't check my friends' stories, I'll get an angry text message what? Did you not see my story today?
If you wanted to tell me something, then tell me.
Yeah, and it's a genuine part of our conversation. So I use it in school, and it's cool too because like you said, you can keep what's going on with the world. You can follow famous people now, and different publications like BuzzFeed, and TV, whatever. They have their own Snap stories that you can look and see.
It's cool to see the live feed of sports. I follow a bunch of different professional athletes, and they're giving their point of view from the locker room or from the putting green and stuff like
another
that.
access level that didn't exist.
I just feel way more connected to everyone in the world with Snapchat, I guess.
CNN has a whole Snap story dedicated to Brussels coverage.
Oh yeah.
That's the way millennials get their news, and it works.
I learned recently that Facebook is for old people. My 7th grade Girl Scouts, when I asked them, I knew none of them had Facebook, but I had just kind of assumed that by the time they got to high school, they would all be allowed to make accounts. And when I asked them, they laughed at me. Oh, Miss Lara, Facebook is for old people. Okay, all right, we're done here.
I have kindergarten and 1st grade Girl Scouts, and they're already obsessed with cell phones. They don't have them, but they talk about them. They use their parents. They're like, "Did you get my text message?" And the other one's like, "No, I don't have a cell phone." It's really funny, but that's something that we never could have imagined when we were in kindergarten.
So I was talking about this with different millennials. I feel like the divide between old and young millennial is whether or not you grew up with a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone until I was a sophomore in college. Wait for that to drop. Right, so I didn't get Facebook until senior year because that's when it was created. So it's just funny, like I feel like that is kind of the divide. I mean, we had to call, okay, this is really crazy. I grew up with a rotary phone in my house that was 30 years old. And I had, let me talk about this, because I had someone come over and was like, I have no idea how to use this. I'm like,
It's just a circle.
so maybe I'm a little different, but I remember when we got our first computer, I was, I think, 12. And I remember, like, we didn't have a computer desk. We had to set it up on a chair and, like, sit on the floor to use the computer. So, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the divide for me. Like, yes, we grew up with technology, but
we
grew up with
remember
the
a
creation
time
of it.
without it. Right. I got my first cell phone on my 16th birthday, and I obviously remember plenty from before I was 16. I do, yeah.
It's funny. I was working with 8th grade students a couple of years ago. One of my students asked me, "Did you have colored TV when you were growing up?" I was like, "Yes."
How old are you?
Yeah, I was like, "How old do you think I am?" And then he said, "Did you have internet?" And I was like, "Actually, in the first few years, actually, no." Like, crap, I am.
It's definitely a thing. I feel like BuzzFeed just posted a video, or there's a string of videos connected to BuzzFeed where they get high school juniors and seniors to talk about things.
And to react to old technology.
And so one of them was just like the Windows 98 or maybe it was 95 trying to turn on a computer, and the idea of having to turn on the monitor and the computer and hold the button like blew all of their minds. And you know, they talk about floppy disks and all that stuff, but it's just so funny
and
to
you would like ruin your project if the little metal part came off. Like that's all you had.
So I would say that people that don't remember life before do you remember life before the internet? Well, you touched on that.
No, like I don't.
But you like know what a floppy disk is?
Yeah, well, my mom had to use them for work, so I remember these things. I definitely remember turning it on. Like I was very little though. Like,
I mean, even
I'm 21.
Even in high school, we still had the old Dell desktop computers that you had to hold the buttons and everything. But then once, you know, Mac Labs got introduced, I guess.
I remember getting the first iPod when that first came out. So
It was like a brick.
Yeah.
Trying to think of, did you guys play Carmen San Diego?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. We actually
Where in
just
the
played it
world?
in the office a few weeks ago because there's a website where you can play all those old computer
Oh,
games. So
there.
Max and I don't know. I'll find it. Yeah, I'll find
And
it.
like Nancy Drew and
Amazon Trail. No, wait, what's
Oregon Trail, yeah.
There's Amazon Trail too.
Which was my favorite. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I don't feel so out of the loop. Well, you actually said, someone mentioned that this is the nostalgic generation. Like that's how they're marketing to this generation. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Blake spoke to that, and he just said that, I mean, that was mostly coming from his perspective as somebody who is marketing to millennials, but he said that this generation does have a tendency to want to look back on a simpler time, and especially, you know, kind of the hipster culture and bringing back, you know, styles and fashions from years ago. There does seem to be this mentality of wanting to live in a simpler time while Snapchatting all of it.
That's interesting because that also seems like a very universal thing.
Sure.
Like if you look at like any rhetoric, like all the political rhetoric, either side is like we need to go back to this thing, but also move forward at the same time, and you get this weird like dissonance between like it was better back then, but also like look at all these advancements that we have and cool technology, and we live to be 75 now instead of 60 and stuff. And it's, yeah, I always find it interesting, and like, I don't know, I don't feel like I have that much nostalgia about like, I wish we were all farmers and whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's just the nature of change over time, right? Like fads and trends repeating itself.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think of as people are trying to figure out, older generations are trying to figure out millennials because they find them like so new and like what are they thinking? Like, oh, they like nostalgia. Like everyone loves nostalgia.
We just know how to Google search for the McDonald's
Yeah.
backpack that you had inside like
And that's
like a thing you really miss.
that was also another point where someone brought up that everyone overshares on Facebook. Like everyone's actually using social media the same way.
I think part of it is that younger people, like the younger you are, the faster you can pick it up.
Right.
Because your brain just is better at learning things. And like kids that were handed phones when they were 2 to entertain them are now like way better using their iPad than their parents are.
Right.
And yeah, and it's interesting because like I think if like my mom's not on Twitter, but she's on Instagram because she just likes to see pictures of my niece and nephew and stuff. But like if she knew how to use Twitter, she might use it, but she just hasn't wanted to learn. And she's like pretty she texts me and stuff, so that's and posts
She's
pictures
savvy.
and stuff. Yeah,
It's
she's
also
there.
interesting because people that age, I feel like, my mom, for instance, I just gave her one of my old iPhones to use sort of as an iPod. She actually has a flip phone that she uses, but I gave it to her because I thought maybe she'd want to look on Instagram at my pictures or whatever.
My parents do that with their toddlers.
She's not obsessed enough with me.
she's watching.
But I handed it to her. She's like, oh, okay. I'm trying to give her a tutorial, and she's like, yeah, I'll look at it and try and figure it out later. But I just feel like a lot of those older people just think I don't have time for this. I don't know why I would make time in my day to like take a picture of my breakfast or.
I don't know why anyone would do
Right. Well, sure. But that's another thing about us that seems to be an integral part of our lives, and it's
Is
certainly
that
not.
self-indulgent to take a photo of your breakfast and think everyone wants to?
Mhm.
As the C-VILLE food writer, I say no.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I
on
have
that.
to.
Well,
I have to.
It's-
But
Oh no, sorry.
not for food, I understand, because I do love looking at pictures of
Yeah.
food, but I have friends, because I've been following them on Snapchat and embracing it more recently. They'll take a picture of like, I'm on an escalator. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
care.
Great.
Why do you think I care?
Yeah.
Your day is not that interesting.
I'll also take pictures of stuff just so I can look back on it. So if I'm on a vacation and I want to be like, what did I do Tuesday afternoon of, whatever month that was, and I'll take a picture just so I remember where I was kind of thing, so I can scroll back through all of my photos and they're all on the cloud and you can go back and where were we for spring break, back sophomore year, stuff like that. So I'll take pictures for myself of my breakfast, but I won't necessarily put that on Instagram. But I also, some people only use Instagram just, very not as frequent as others, I would say. Like some people only post once or twice a month, and some people post every day. So there's different ways to use it.
And there's also like I know a lot of photographers and like my friend Harley makes like bakes, and that's way more of like a promotional, like it's a whole thing about posting so many times a day and with the right hashtags and blah blah
Right
blah.
time.
Right, which is like I'm all for it. Harley,
Right,
if
she's
you're
trying to
listening.
sell a product.
Yeah, exactly. But it also is like I'm not gonna like I'll buy your stuff anyway. I don't need to see all this, but I'm gonna follow you so you have another follower. But like, I'd rather see pictures of like you and your life, not like the.
Having a personal and a professional.
Yeah, and that's
background.
that's always
Too.
yeah.
Which is a recent feature that Instagram just put in, that you can switch in between
Mhm.
accounts, and that's a
Oh,
big deal.
yeah.
Right?
Really?
Very
That's good to know.
See the older generation.
Wow.
So that was one of my questions is when we first started using Facebook in the journalism world, you had to walk a line, like you had followers who were people you were reporting on in the community, so you had to be cognizant of what you were posting and you had to be neutral on all your subjects, so you didn't want them to know your opinions on a lot of things. You know, so I don't know if that's still relevant with, obviously you have different profiles now, but I don't know.
I think it depends on the field you're in.
Yeah, I think as a journalist, it's very
Definitely.
important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if
So-
you're doing any sort of like I have a friend that works at the Center for Politics, and I couldn't have told you which way he leaned
Mhm.
as far as politically, but
Mm-hmm.
he told me the other day and I was shocked.
And then you put a photo of his breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think if you're touting yourself as objective, you have to appear objective at least.
Mhm. Do you use social media different ways? Like do you use Facebook primarily? Okay, I'm just using this example. Facebook primarily for news, or is it Twitter? Do you go directly to websites, or how do you get your news? Where does that come from?
Probably Twitter, and then like and then you click on links and go read them on the actual website.
Twitter and Facebook for me.
Yeah,
Facebook,
Reddit.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of you subscribe to this email service called the Daily Spam?
I do.
Yeah,
I do that
it's
every
really
morning.
great because they just email you the daily news every morning.
Yeah.
I also use the iPhone native app, the news app now, because you can, every morning they do like what happened while you were asleep pretty much in the world. And so I'll don't check that every day, but you can follow different news outlets. Like I'll follow some fashion ones and sports ones and current events, or nation/world news. So I follow a bunch of different things, and it kind of sums it all up together every day, and then you can go in and click on all these different articles. But I definitely use Twitter the most for news.
Mm-hmm. Do you read whole articles? I don't think anyone does. It's not a loaded question. I'm just curious. We found out people.
Everyone read this
Yeah.
entire millennial article, right?
But in general, I mean, there's so much to read, and you're getting so many different links through all the social media. I mean, are you reading full articles, just kind of skimming? Just curious how you use it.
It depends. I think I read a fair amount of full articles, but there's a lot of times when I'll just like look for the key points and move on because I don't feel like reading about something really in depth.
You know how interested am I in the story? Like, is it like I'm like, oh, this is a huge event, and maybe I'll go read the whole thing.
Would anything, the way the article's set up, draw you in more if there's a video? So everyone's trying to figure out how to write for millennials too. That's another thing. But would that, like a giant pull quote, video, any kind of related links? Like everyone thinks millennials need articles to be interactive. Is kind of, I think, the thought.
And there was a lot of talk about our short attention span.
Yeah.
About the fact that we can't or won't read something long.
I think if I'm scrolling through Twitter, if there's an image attached to the tweet, I'm more likely to look at that than if there's not an image, for sure.
I think it also has to do with the quality of the content. Like, if something is, like, I just read this really amazing article from The Atlantic the other day, and I read the entire thing because I was, like, gripped by the writing and what they were talking about. Yeah, I think there's still, like, what's it? Like, there's still a place for long-form content as long as it's good content.
Oh, I used to read when Grantland was still around. I don't know if you guys know that. It's like sports and culture and stuff. They're now the Ringer, sort of. Anyway, but I would read. That was like one of my most frequented places, and it was all long form stuff, or like mostly long form, and then some like quick hitting kind of email chains or something. But like it was a lot of long articles about sports and media and culture and movies and stuff. And so I think it is like I trusted them to always put out good stuff, and so I like the writers were really good, and so I'd always say if they're putting something up that's worth probably reading, and then if the subject looks interesting. And I think it's like with the Atlantic, it's like if it's in the Atlantic, it's probably decent. So you can
Probably.
spend your time reading.
Yeah, I was telling Jess this story before. Back in 2012, Graylin Brashear, who was the news editor at the time, she and I spent weeks doing extensive research and interviews on a very large cover story about the state of affordable housing in Charlottesville. We agonized over the story. We interviewed so many people. It was this long form piece. We were so proud of it. Posted it online, not a word, not one comment, not one like on Facebook. And then the next day, this was during election season in 2012, there was a llama on the downtown mall wearing a Barack Obama sweater, and we snapped a picture of it and said, hey look, an Obama llama is on the mall, posted it on Facebook. It was reposted and liked and shared and tweeted and Instagrammed hundreds of times, and we were both just fuming that after we had spent all this time and energy on this extensive, important story, what people are more interested in is a picture of an Obama llama.
Llamas. That's what the millennials really like is llamas.
Yeah.
Well, and I believe
Yeah.
one of the biggest stories in 2015 was those 2 llamas that were loose in the interstate.
Full circle.
So really we learned as llamas.
Llamas
What are
and
we
puppies
doing
this
this
week.
week?
We're gonna need to get a llama.
Yeah.
Best of party llama.
But I think that speaks to the culture at large.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking for
Yeah.
a funny photo
Yep.
online, apparently.
Oh yeah, the number of times like on Facebook someone will be like, I mean just like my mom, or not my mom, but like my mom's like cousins or some some random family member will post a dumb BuzzFeed article or a meme or whatever, and it's just like, why? Okay, that's whatever.
A lot of puppies doing something, and then the whole thing about cats being scared of cucumbers. Those videos.
Yes,
those-
there are a lot of those.
What about print versus digital? Everyone's scared that print's gonna go away, which I don't think is true.
We're not scared.
We're not scared, but
We're not
also
scared.
in 2015, their vinyl sales made more money than streaming services. So I think
That's
millennials.
nostalgia.
There's the nostalgia thing.
Nostalgia.
But it's also having a tangible item and being able to
Uh-huh,
flip through your milk crate that you got from your mom's basement, like to see what music you have. So I think it's kind of our parents are definitely the ones that are still getting the paper every morning and flipping through that. But I would say we're also still very connected. And I don't know if that's because my job is completely dependent on it. But I know if I go to a different city, I'm still going to pick up their alt mag that's sitting in the coffee shop and flip
Right,
through it and see
yeah.
what's going on. It's definitely something I haven't lost touch in, but I wasn't necessarily all about print in the beginning. So
Do you have magazine subscriptions? Yes.
no.
My parents do.
My parents do, and I like
Grab 'em.
those. If someone were to give it to me, I'd be hyped, but I'm not gonna pay the money to do it.
Yeah, my mom gives me a subscription to Cooking Light every year.
Yeah.
But I also have Runner's World and The Atlantic, so
Mhm.
usually I have a stack of magazines on my coffee table.
As a college student, I would say that most of my friends like to read print books as opposed to online
Oh,
articles
yeah.
because it's just harder that way.
Oh, it's so
It's
bad.
way nicer to read print.
It's funny because when I was in school was right when the Kindle was like really big. I had one and I was like, oh, this is the best. It's so much better than, I mean, I was like, I like tangible books, but like this is so much nicer to travel with, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember there was a study that came out that like your reading retention, it's like the worst on like a like iPad kind of screen, and then it like is worse on a Kindle, and then it's the best with a book. And I remember reading that, and then also just like I broke my Kindle and I was like,
Okay.
I can't break a book. This is, but it was like around that, and I would get like school books on it and stuff, and my professors were always like, what do you do? Like what is that? And I'm like, it's the book.
Yeah, definitely having like a PDF of your textbook in class, and your professor would be like, no laptops, but bring your book to class. And it's like, well, I found the PDF from Russia, and I didn't want to pay
Right.
$200. So like cost of textbooks is way too much. I found the PDF. Let me just have my laptop open. So it's different in that sense. But I'm gonna
I
like
print it too. Like, I print a lot.
That's really different. Yeah, we did not have laptops in college, and I remember it was like maybe someone who's 4 years younger than me. I went to the University of Missouri, and there was a photo of one of his classrooms, and he was the only person that didn't have a laptop, so he's in the middle like this, and everyone else, you can't see them because of their screen. I don't know, he was the holdout on the laptop. But,
I had a professor who he had a really good system where he would just let 2 people have their laptops out, and they would take notes for the whole class, and then everyone else was not allowed to because he's like, I don't want to look at the back of your computer the whole time. Like, you can take notes or not. Someone else is going to do it. Like, the best note takers did it.
It's a lot of pressure to take good notes.
Right, so they were-
Wow.
They were on
Take
point.
notes in different ways.
Yeah, but like they would, and then TA would compile them and send them out to their class. But it was actually like super freeing for me because when I'm over on my computer, it's like distraction central.
Sure.
even with the Chrome extensions that don't let you get on social media.
Oh, I never
Then
use
just open
those.
up Safari.
Yeah,
Is that a thing?
You can get like a Chrome extension that doesn't, like you put a timer, like you're studying, you're not allowed to open any of these,
Really?
but then you can just go
Yeah,
download
it's too easy to
Firefox or open your phone. So I also use like Evernote in different systems that would, if I took notes on my laptop, they would then show up on my phone. So if I didn't have my laptop in another class, I could still see the notes. So that was kind of helpful. But I guess you could just bring a notebook. But they're slightly similar sizes. But
How do you stay organized? Do you guys write things down, or do you have like calendar on your phone? I don't know.
I write everything down.
I do too.
I have a written to-do list.
Yep.
I write down grocery lists.
I have lots of Post-its all over my desk, a physical planner where I write everything down.
I
Yeah.
like to do both.
Yeah.
I put everything in my phone, everything in my digital calendar, and it's great because I get reminders. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this today. Cool. And then I also have like the note section on the iPhone. I have so many. I probably have like 400 notes.
yeah.
Honestly, so many grocery lists.
You never delete the old grocery list, you just start a new grocery list.
That's so true.
You're like, wait, I already have bananas.
I think I have a both person. Like my calendar will show every concert I want to go to in the next 2 months, but you know, my friend who's getting married in May kind of thing. But I'm not gonna, if I know I need to call my friend back tomorrow night, I'm not gonna put that in my calendar. That'll just be the sticky note on my desk kind of thing. So.
Huh.
Compromise.
Reminding yourself to call someone back.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing.
Mhm.
Especially with having so many friends that, you know, live in New York and LA and San Francisco and
Yeah,
Austin,
sure,
and it's like,
True.
what's the time difference? Like when I walk home from a bar, am I gonna call my friend in New York or San Diego? No, the one in San Diego is gonna answer because they're 3 hours behind, so
Yeah.
that's a thing.
Yeah.
You kind of forget where all your friends are. No offense to my friends.
This is personal experience, but is social media overwhelming for anyone else? I just feel like you could always be behind, and I mean, I don't really use Facebook all that much if I'm not really in the office because I'm using it for both, just looking at both things. But there'll be days and I won't check it, and someone's like, "Oh my God, did you hear so and so's getting married?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Seriously?" Like it was on Facebook 3 days ago. I'm like, "Okay, right." I don't know.
Well, Instagram just announced that they're no longer going to do their feed the same way. That's not based on time. It's now just on Facebook.
That freaked me out.
It's,
I didn't like that.
I'm not into it personally, but I think millennials are also afraid of change. So
It's always the case that like a platform makes like a huge change and
Yeah.
then everyone's like, oh my God, this is terrible, and literally like 2 weeks later you forget about
Right.
it and you can't
Oh, I've never when
imagine anything
Facebook changed.
Yep.
Their whole layout. I don't even remember what the old one looked
Nope.
like.
Yeah,
now.
me neither.
But that was like such a big
That was a
thing.
big deal.
And
especially
everyone was
because
freaking out.
they did it at different times. Like I got the new layout before other people did,
Yeah.
and then we would just try to like compare them and. Ugh.
But now it's like, well, yeah, timeline's great, cool.
All right, well, is there anything else we didn't touch on that anyone wanted to bring up, or?
We didn't talk about Tinder.
We
well.
didn't do anything about dating. I
We
think
didn't.
We did not.
But
And
it's
then-
fine. Maybe that's a whole different.
Take a different.
That's a different
It's
story.
different hour. Part 2. Or anything else from the article that stood out for you, or is that?
I think we pretty much hit on everything.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you guys for joining
thanks for
us
coming.
and joining the conversation, and thanks for watching on Periscope and online to you guys out there who I can't see.